Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about creating more sexual desire and working through what blocks your pleasure with intimacy coach Ashley Jones.
And this is actually part one of a 3-part series that we're going to be doing so that you can spice up your sex life. So you're going to want to tune in for the next few weeks. Today's interview is with Ashley, and she's an intimacy and sexual pleasure coach. She's also a mom, so she can relate to a lot of the challenges that parents even face. And we'll make sure that we link her Instagram and website in the show notes. But today's topic is going to be so worth listening all the way through, because she drops some truths about desire, what creates it, what does the opposite of creating desire, how women have been ripped off and experiencing sexual desire, modern day challenges like mental load, and also the importance of pleasure, which often gets deprioritized. And she talks about this in a way, you guys, that we have really never heard before. And I think it's going to open up your eyes to some new things within your partnership and your sex life. So let's dive into this amazing conversation. Ashley, thank you so much for being here today for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to share even just a quick thought that came to me before recording this, which will lead us into the first question. So in our personal experience, right, having been married for years, having a baby now, quote unquote, busy life, we don't use the word busy, but that's kind of the way people can relate to it. What we find is that in our marriage now, in the season that we're in, it's not that we have this burning passion where we have to draw each other into the room and rip each other's clothes off. And what we actually find is that we don't always feel like it. Like, we don't feel in the mood, at the end of a long day and things like that. So what has really shifted for us is actually going into the bedroom together before we even feel like it, and just kind of being like, hey, let's go into the intimate space, and then we can begin certain things that have us become in the mood. So that leads me to the question, is it natural or common to not necessarily feel like it before you can actually still go and have a great intimate experience?
Yeah, that is incredibly common, especially in the season of life that you are in. And it's important for everyone to realize that we do have these sexual seasons in our lives. We have our summer where we have our winter, we have our springs, we have our falls. And I love that you guys are doing what you're doing by just calling your attention and creating that space, even though you're not totally in the mood and having that deep desire, because it's important not to get stuck in any of those places. Often when our lives get so full, like they are with you right now with baby Sky, and your work, that we just get in patterns where we don't make the time and space, and then it becomes a pattern. And then we're stuck in that uncomfortable place of not knowing how to access it when we shut it down unconsciously.
Mm-hmm. So in a way, it's not necessarily, because I know that that's what we hear from a lot of couples with similar circumstances is, well, I'm too tired and I don't feel like it. And so do you, in a way, kind of recommend that couples kind of at first think beyond whether they feel like it, like not waiting for that to at least start to explore the intimate space and go in the bedroom?
Yeah, so there's a couple things with that. I think it's really important to honor the seasons that you're in, to realize that, you, like for you guys, you just had a baby, or if you're starting a business, or the things that happen in life that create fullness where maybe our desire wanes a little bit. Like it's okay to honor that, to understand that for each other. However, to take those steps to create some time and space to cultivate that connection, to feel pleasure, is so important, and to not just let it die away. So yes, it is important that even if you're not feeling that desire, to create the scene, if you will, to call each other into the bedroom, to and listen to each other deeper, and what will feel good in this moment, in the season that you're in. Maybe it's not just going straight in and ripping your clothes off and going for it. Maybe it's a more gentle transition from like cuddling or holding or little massaging, something like that, that can start to evoke the desire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess it leads me to another question, and it's not actually gender specific, though maybe we do hear it more from the feminine, but I've also heard it from the masculine as well. But there's sort of the moment, the intimacy space that you create, and then there is the rest of life. And I think for some couples, the rest of life is a part of the routine, and you could say just, I mean, some of the impacts we have on our partners that maybe lead to that decline of feeling the desire. So, how much is emotional connection in your day to day life or just in your general interactions really a part of creating the sexual connection and the desire for these intimate moments?
Very much so. And I think that it varies from person to person. And I would say that generally speaking, women tend to be more sensitive to this. And that's not across the board, but often that is the case with women where they just, whatever has transpired in the day, if there's been little glitches in communication or things that have happened that feel uncomfortable or triggering, then it's really hard often for women or one of the partners to drop that or to release it and to be fully present in intimacy. Like it's often carried into that emotional component of not feeling comfortable or feeling that trigger is still there. And so it gets in the way of opening to intimacy. And for whatever reason, often men don't tend to carry that. They can often just leave that behind and totally show up and be in that space. So, it's sensitive, or it's good to be sensitive and to understand your partner, male or female, and, what their sensitivities are, and to be able to cultivate that space of understanding and love and compassion and desire, whatever that looks like for your unique coupledom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% with everything you said. And for some reason, I was feeling into maybe some of the men or some of the couples that might be listening. So I just want to throw it out there. Like this is me tuning into them.
Mm-hmm.
They might say to themselves, "That's that kind of sounds like a good idea." And what if they just really feel like they're that much different? Because we've had some couples say, like, for the masculine or for the man, like they are just ready to go at any time, where, I guess in a general perspective, the feminine or the female feels like, well, what do you mean? Don't just jump on me. And or on the other side of it, you're just like always wanting sex like all the time. And then sometimes that feels like that doesn't create the space for desire. So I guess the question is for those that might be listening, what if they just feel like, well, we're just different in this area?
Yeah, this is a deep, deep discussion. And often what happens is that when there's somebody who's needing or wanting something from somebody else, especially in the realm of sex, that's usually a huge turnoff. And there needs to be space to cultivate desire for both parties. And so often what I see, and I think that you guys probably see this a lot, and again, this isn't across the board, there's different variations of this, but where the husband man is wanting sex often and the woman is not wanting it as much. And there's a couple things I'd like to say about that. One is that it's really important for us to mature as human beings, as sexual human beings, to understand how to work with our own sexual desires and intimacy and energy so that we aren't putting that on our partner. And the other thing is that when you cultivate more pleasure, more connection, the desire will evoke itself. So learning how to shift maybe the ways that we're approaching sex, the ways that we are, connecting in our intimacy, seeing where we can evolve and deepen those areas can often create a lot more desire than just going at it the same ways that we have and having that tendency to have a need that needs to be satisfied. versus like really deeply connecting and seeing what is going on with each other. And yes, different people have different drives for sure. However, what I see as that kind of excuse of like, oh, we're just different is often just a miss in connection, a miss in understanding each other, and a shifting your own internal energy and how you're running that towards your partner can really make a huge difference in evoking and increasing that desire and intimacy.
Yeah, and I'm really excited in the coming questions to go into more about, you said something, right? Like when there is pleasure, you're going to want more of it, right? And so typically people kind of look at women as not wanting it as frequently, but like you've said to us in previous conversations, if it's creating pleasure and you're enjoying it, you're going to want it more frequently. So we'll go to Pleasure Town here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But before going there, I want to go deeper into something you were just going down. And again, a previous conversation, you said pressure blocks pleasure. And this somewhat of like an obligation or an entitlement, well, we're married, I have needs. And whether that's being verbalized, or it's more so just like kind of energetically being picked up on by the partners. Can you go more into what you mean by like how things it can't be out of obligation that you're having sex with your partner, and also what you mean by kind of maturing how you handle your sexual energy?
Yeah, this is a vast subject, but what I will say is that most of us were raised with very little understanding, knowledge, information about our sexual energy and about how to use it and work with it and be with it. And so we have, a lot of this sexual energy, especially for men, and it's like this outputting of like, I have this desire, I have this need, and I need it to be met, and you're my wife, and so this is, and I'm being faithful, and so this is, you're the one that I'm directing it towards, and I need this satisfied. Versus being like, oh, I have this powerful energy inside of me, and how can I work with it? How can I direct it towards all the things in my life in different ways? And I'm not just talking, sex, but this is powerful energy. It's creative energy. So how can I direct this towards my work, towards, playing with my family, with my children? How can I work this energy in different ways instead of just having a pinpointed focus of like, I have to have this outlet? And often it gets into this habitual loop, a lot for men in the oxytocin hit of sex, of that release. And so it becomes almost an addiction, like they have to have that. And so when men can, and women both, we both need to like evolve our understanding of our energy. When men can shift us and understand how to work this energy in different ways, as well as just expanding their ability to meet their partners, then that usually drops away, where they're not feeling that entitlement or that neediness, because they are like a fulfilled, connected human being to themselves. So this is, there's a lot to say about that. So that's as best as I can summarize it. What I will say for women often is that they're usually grossly undereducated too about their bodies, about their energy as well. And so when they feel that neediness, that entitlement, it often will go into either having like a dutiful sex, or it'll go into resistance, because their bodies are more sensitive. Women are the receivers. So we're receiving that, we receive into our bodies. And so when we're not feeling yes, an openness, that connection, that the degree of pleasure that is available for us, then our bodies will often, and our minds and our hearts will often be in resistance.
Hey couples, we want to jump in here real quick before we continue the conversation and ask you a question. Would you want to attend an intimacy workshop with her? Now, some of you saw online that that is who taught the intimacy class that we did in Hawaii. Now, you may not be able to travel to Hawaii for this, but guess what? We're bringing it to you in your home. And in May, you can attend an online intimacy workshop with her that we're going to be hosting. In this workshop, what you're going to experience and understand is the energetics that create desire. What creates wanting for each other, and also what might be blocking your sex life as a couple. But we're going to guide you, she's going to guide you in exploring that together. It will be a big shift in the way you see intimacy, and it's also going to dive into a tool and principle that honestly rocked our world, which is power dynamics and power play. And she's going to explain it in a way that you'll see you can implement it even if you're busy, even if you're parents. And it's going to bring a lot of play and clarity into how you can create more of that desire and wanting for each other. Now, here's the thing. If we made this available to everyone in our audience, it would just be too large. So there's a couple ways to qualify. Number one, all of our private clients are getting access to that as a bonus. We love our clients. The only other way to get access to this is actually to purchase our Communication Mastery Bundle, which if you've been listening for a while, it's time to have this anyways, right? This bundle is going to provide you step-by-step communication exercises to do together. It's going to help you address conflict. Imagine being able to log in from your phone or a website and be able to work through and learn anything you want about communication. So that's all in our Communication Mastery Bundle. So not only are you going to get all of that for the lowest discount that you'll find it, but you're also going to get this workshop on intimacy and your sex life for free. Now, this is a May only opportunity, so make sure you go to the link in the show notes. It's a little longer of a URL, which is onlinecouplesworkshops.com/communication bundle, and you're going to see how you can get access to that by signing up. All right, everyone, let's head back to the interview. You introduce something that's probably going to be new for a lot of men, hearing about that sex energy and how they can learn to kind of channel it and use it in other areas besides just the bedroom and penetration. So if they wanted to learn more about that, is that learning about breath work? Like, what's a term that they could search or look for books? And we'll make sure it's in the show notes too, if they want to learn more about their own sex energy.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to go about this. Breath, for sure. Number one, learning to understand your breath is very important. The tantric traditions, the Taoist traditions, these are all lineages that have studied and understand this to deep, deep degrees. And, maybe something that you relate to, it may not. Even Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this. This is becoming more and more mainstream and understanding that we do have this powerful energy and we are disconnected from it and using it in very limited ways. If you want to look up Tantra, if you want to look up, Taoism, if you want to look up Joe Dispenza's work, or I highly recommend following some different people. Jonathan White is a great male reference for men understanding their sexual energy. Chris Bale, Awakened Intent, is another great resource for men understanding their sexual energy and how to relate with women.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, and obviously the theme of this podcast is create more sexual desire, and that's kind of what this first segment is about. We're about to go into, what blocks pleasure. But I guess before we do that, more practically, because if I'm listening to this for the first time and I'm just hearing about the breath, I might think like, oh, well, I never really thought much about my breath. It was more of maybe a body mechanic type thing. So can you share something maybe practical or more of a takeaway around why the breath is important and maybe something that the listener could even try out after this podcast?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, the breath is something that most of us just don't have much awareness. We're just going through our lives and we're usually taking kind of shallow breaths and we carry a lot of tension in our bodies. And so breath is a great vehicle to one, connect deeper with your own body and your own emotional state. So it brings you out of the mind, the busy doing mind, and into the sensation body. And so if you are in intimacy or sex with your partner and you start to expand and take deeper breaths, you are going to come out of your crazy busy mind and come into your body, and you're going to be able to expand your pleasure. So it's actually quite simple. So next time you are in intimacy, even holding, even hugging your partner, try taking deeper, fuller breaths. When you are in the act of sex with your partner, try taking deeper, fuller breaths and see what that brings to the experience. When you do that, you kind of soften your energetic field, you open yourself up to your partner and to yourself, and you're able to feel sensations that you often don't even pay attention to when we're in this shallow type of breathing and we're just chasing after the orgasm, and we're going into that like fast, penetrative, kind of disconnected sex.
Interesting. Disconnected sex. And
Yeah.
since we're talking about creating desire, and again, I think that there's many reasons why women might say they have less desire than their partner, but you said something alluding to women have been ripped off and don't really know what pleases them or more about their bodies. So can you expand on that and how women have been ripped off?
Yeah, we just haven't been educated. I mean, we don't even, we're not taught about most of our internal anatomy at all, or even our external anatomy. And it's hard to understand our internal anatomy because we can't see it. And there's so much available there that we don't know how to access because we weren't taught about it. And so, I mean, even you just had a baby. I don't know if your, OB ever even offered you to see your cervix. It's very rare that we get a look into our bodies and understand the incredible potential that's there. And so that's what I mean. We just are undereducated. Now, when you get educated and you start to understand your body and explore it and connect to it, we are far more vast and sexual beings, women, than men are. We have our capacity for orgasm and pleasure builds and builds and is way, way, way more expansive than men can usually attain. So we just don't know that. And we're taught this narrative that we unfortunately go into, and we're not experiencing the connection and the pleasure that is there, but we just don't know how.
Actually, there's something I just wanted to jump in on. I know that I'm not the female in this in this case, but I guess there's a sense of it as a male too. But when you say something like that, we're far more expansive as a sexual being than we're owning or we're realizing. My guess is there's something when a listener hears that makes them feel like that's wrong, like that shouldn't be, or there's something, and I don't want to go into like because of a religious background, but maybe parts of society it does come from that. But have you found that, like, when you say that, if I was to say that to someone, you're a far more sexual being than you're giving yourself credit for, or have realized, is there something that people feel almost wrong about that?
Yeah, well, hopefully not. But I know that for a while, there was even part of my own journey where I felt kind of broken because I would hear women talking about these, crazy, amazing pleasure experiences and just being like, well, I've never experienced that. And so, yeah, I hope that just knowing that the potential that we can experience physically and energetically, that the female body was made to experience, that God made us to have and experience all this pleasure. He made us like this. So is way more vast than we know, is what I want to say, than most women understand or know, or most men understand or know. So the potential is really quite beautiful. So yeah, that's what I want to come across.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, if women understood more about their bodies, but then that can really support if they're with a male partner. Now, we're in a heterosexual relationship, so that's the language we're going to use because that's our experience. So if women are with a male partner, it can really empower them to please them if they understand it more. And that's something Aaron and I are exploring right now because my body is different, after having a baby, maybe not totally anatomically different, but in terms of what feels good. And also just I'm different now in my 30s than I used to be in my 20s. And that's something that I'm really grateful that Aaron is open to. He does not have an ego about how he should know exactly what feels good to me in that moment. Like we're learning to be even more in communication and explore it together and learn more about the body. And like, what do you think that a female partner can start to do or say to her partner to kind of have it become more of an exploration to learn the body rather than just like, all right, let's do the same old missionary,
Oh,
go as fast
or
as we
or
can.
that she feels she has to do it on her own.
Or she has to do it on her own. Like, what is something she can either like request or bring up in dialogue?
I think one of the most beautifully honest and authentic things a female partner can say to her partner is, I am wanting to understand my pleasure more and my body, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to explore this with me.
Mm, that's such an inviting way to say it. Like, I can't imagine any partner being like, what the frick? Like, you want to understand your pleasure more? Like, I just can't imagine anyone having a bad reaction to that.
Yeah, I think if we can be really honest and vulnerable and like, I don't know all of me and I hear about these things and I want to understand myself more and see if I can have some of these experiences. And I'd like to have them with you.
Hmm.
Would you be willing to explore this? And usually that exploration can be a little clunky. And it's
Yeah.
okay. So there's like a part of us that you want to increase your pleasure, open up the communication about this. Like get real and honest with each other, but from a very loving place. Often this communication is tricky because it's vulnerable. And if somebody goes, oh, can you try to do something different? They think, oh, I'm not doing it right. And what I found is that most male partners want to bring a lot of pleasure to their female partners. But we're elusive. We change all the time, day to day, month to month, through the seasons of our lives. And so leaving the communication open is really valuable if you can do it from love and patience and respect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the fact that you brought up clunky was a good transition to sort of this next segment. And we had talked with you about that just in connecting. And obviously, we were at the intimacy workshop with you in Hawaii, where you obviously live too. But that is a good transition to what blocks pleasure. So obviously, we were talking about creating desire. And then there's the whole part about, well, what gets in the way of that? And so I do want to address clunkiness, but I want to start with a quote actually that you had said to us. When desire and pleasure is high, your blocks fall away. Now that's a paraphrase,
Yeah.
but let's say a little bit more just for context around that statement as we dive in, because, people have different, I would say, reasons or concerns,
Circumstances.
we don't have time. I think more subconsciously, well, if I don't know what I'm doing, it's going to feel clunky. I'm not going to feel like this super masculine type of partner if I don't know what I'm doing. So anyway, when desire and pleasure is high, your blocks fall away. Start there because I love that quote.
Yeah. And I think it is unique to every couple, but when desire and pleasure is high, the blocks fall away. So if you are experiencing a high and expansive amount of pleasure, you're going to want that and you're going to make time and space for it. It just is that. If you're not experiencing that, then the blocks are going to come up and you're going to make excuses and it's just not going to be worth the time and energy for you to, create that time and space, unfortunately, because it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel good to the body. It doesn't feel good to, the heart, sometimes the emotional body. So having more deep, expansive, connected, pleasurable intimacy is where the blocks fall away. And, those now some couples have like incredible sex, but are disconnected in some ways. And that's another kind of form of, of distortion in a way, or where they have other things to work on. But when we're talking about a lot of these blocks that come up for couples, it is like the clunkiness that I spoke to is being able to move through and learn new things, understanding each other in a new way, so that you can access that depth of pleasure and connection that we all want. We have to kind of get out of our own way. And sometimes, a lot of the times, learning these new things is a little clunky because it's something new, and we get uncomfortable going through the clunkiness. So sometimes we stop ourselves from doing that, which is too bad, because we can't get to learn or master something new if we don't, if you get on the bike for the first time, you're going to fall off, when you're a kid, you're going to fall over. You need somebody to hold the seat for you and help you balance and learn to balance. It's like, we have to give ourselves a little bit of space and compassion and openness to be able to learn new ways of relating and creating pleasure for each other.
It's like what I'm hearing in this conversation so far is it's for many couples going to take relearning how to have sex.
Yeah.
Like relearning it completely and unlearning that you just walk into the room, undress, and then it's just about penetration. And, maybe we'll have time to go into some specific ways to kind of warm things up. You've talked to us and we're very intrigued about like power dynamics and power play. So we'll go there in just a few minutes, but sticking with the blocks that Erin was bringing up, a big one that people say, and again, we're kind of creating these generalizations, but women really deal with this mental load, right? Like, especially moms, it's like, okay, they're thinking about their kids and their list. And women have an amazing ability to think about 100 things at one time. But you said something very briefly earlier that I think is worth addressing further, of when you're in your head and you are experiencing that mental load, it doesn't really lend to having a lot of desire for your partner. So can you address kind of like being in your head as a block, and what would it look like to try and come out of your head and be more in your body?
Yeah, that's such a deep process for so many women as we're trying to hold our lives together and our kids and all the details and our homes. And so to come out of your head and get into your body and be in your desire is actually really important, because it feeds and fuels your life in really deep and rich ways. If you are able to connect and have the pleasure that you want. So how do you do that? Learning, having that communication, but also recognizing that, okay, I've had this full day. I have all of these things on my head, in my mind, spinning around. And how can I get out of this headspace, the monkey space, and into my body, letting that drop away? And the number one thing I would say to do that is to use your breath, to take some time, take a moment, drop into your breath, feel your body, drop into your body, and that will help you get out of your head and into your body to be able to access to create space for yourself first and foremost. I think most women mothers don't create a lot of space for themselves. And so then when they're taking care of all the things, all the details, and then their husbands or partners are also, wanting or needing sex from them, it just becomes like an overload because they are under-resourced in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So taking time and space for yourself to take a bath, to drop into breath, to give yourself just some spaciousness in your own life, to feel yourself, will allow you to, get out of that block, the head, the trying to do all the things and be with yourself. Because when you can't, knowing that it's important, like prioritizing your time for yourself and time and sexual time and space, it actually is so good. The chemicals that get released when you are having sexual pleasure, these are all really, really important for your health, vitality, and well-being, for your hormones, for all of that. It is essential for a healthy and well human being to be able to access those. So prioritizing it, dropping into your breath, and doing some self-care are my easiest answers for that.
I love that so much. And, women, I want to speak to you for a second. Woman to woman, mom to mom, or even if you're not a mom, you deserve to experience pleasure. You're not just here to be a human doing. I know you have a long list of things to do. I know that your kids need you, and I know you're tired at the end of the day, but the excuses have to drop. And I'm saying this because it's something I have really been having a breakthrough in, is really letting myself pursue pleasure and let that be a priority. And you've been a big inspiration for me in that, Ashley. You led the workshop that we attended in Hawaii, which was right when we were starting to be able to be intimate after giving birth. And like, you just really have inspired me and reminded me that I deserve pleasure. And even if that means dropping something else off the list to do, like, that's important, and your relationship is important, and you and your partner being intimate is more important than a clean kitchen. I just got to say it, right? And both can happen too. Believe me, I love a clean kitchen, right? But I just wanted to say that to everyone listening.
Yeah, and let me just piggyback on that. The more that you deny yourself, and I was there. I've raised 2 kids. I totally know how heavy the load can get. But the more we deny ourselves time for self-care, which is actually rewarded in our society. Oh, it's selfish to have self-care, to take care of yourself. But actually it's the opposite, because if you deny that, if you deny yourself that connection to yourself, to your partner, to any of that, you start to get resentful and frustrated and angry. And you will start to gain weight. You'll start to your life you'll start to be, a little more irritable with your children. All of these things piggyback on each other. When you can connect to self-care and start to prioritize that pleasure is important, you will start to connect with everything in your life from a place of more joy and connection. And I'm not just talking about the toxic positivity. I'm talking about real, genuine joy. And to feel that pleasure in your body and to have those chemicals and hormones release, it fuels you and supports you as a mother, as a woman, and as a wife, and as a if you are in a career as well. It supports all of that. So we need to turn this around, this social, conditioning that we get as women to just serve, 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 and never take care of ourselves. This martyrdom that gets, caused from that belief system, into how can we live a more pleasure-filled life where we take care of ourselves and we come from more joy and pleasure in our lives in all of these aspects. And sex is a very important component of that. And learning to access your deep pleasure is also incredibly important to be able to understand how fueling it is for our lives.
Exclamation point, exclamation point. Everyone take that on. That's so amazing.
Well, it does seem like maybe a lot of the blocks that we're talking about here do come from certain belief systems. And so maybe this next one is similar. Will be more of a generalization at first, but since we are talking about women, hopefully the women don't feel like this is, or the men don't feel like this is all about the women. But there does seem to be a somewhat imbalanced belief, I would say, that women think that the men should be more of the initiator. Is that something you hear? And what would you say to that?
It is something that I hear, but it's not necessarily true. I think because we tend to be, if you're connected to your feminine energy, we're a little more sensitive and aware of things, or can be, that actually letting the woman take the lead. And I don't mean initiating. I mean, it's good to both initiate for sure, but I also mean in speaking her desire. This is what I'm feeling in this moment. I'm feeling tender, or I'm feeling wild, or I'm feeling like I want to explore something, or I'm feeling whatever it is. To let her desire lead the way can be a really beautiful component of kind of listening and dropping into deeper connection and letting the intimacy be a lot more fun and expressive.
What was really helpful, and I know people were excited by the episode we recorded after the intimacy workshop with you in Hawaii. You know, you taught us something new with power dynamics and power play. And what was great about that is that we then kind of both initiated. Like we take turns being the dom and the sub, and you know, some people might not have heard that episode. So can you kind of do a brief explanation about what power dynamics, power play is, the dom and sub, and how that can actually kind of take the pressure off of just one person being the initiator?
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to preference this by saying that I don't really come from the world of BDSM. I am more of an energy sensitive being. So I like to like kind of play with those components with energy rather than it being like whips and chains and all that. So dom and sub to me is like taking the lead, where the if you are in the dom space, you are completely creating an experience for your sub, for the person who is in submission. And however, you are doing this from a place of really giving them what you know they love and like. And so there has to be communication. And so you're actually in deep service of them. It's not actually a taking, it's a giving to them, but from this place of like being in power. But you are in total service of them. It's just such this delicate dance. And to see how much when you are in submission, how much can you surrender? How much can you receive? Because you know, submission is about receiving. It's about that surrender, letting go, and fully just being in the experience of receiving, which can be really challenging, especially for women because we give so much. And then to play with those roles and to switch it, and to be, if you are used to being the more submissive one, what does that feel like to be the more dominant one, to fully step into your power and create an experience for your sub? And what does that feel like to like be in these different roles? Can be incredibly informative and fun and playful, and it can hit triggers and it can hit all of it. And so it's a great way to kind of expand your capacity for understanding each other and for mixing things up a little bit, for learning new ways of relating.
Yeah, there would be a whole other podcast, I think, for us to really go into the experience that we had with you. Well, I guess one of the things I do want to say for everyone, I love how you are really clearly defining the energetic side of the dom and the sub roles, way different than BDSM or whips. And, you know, you said in the workshop that this is clean. I don't want anyone listening to go and search on Google for dom and sub. Like you're going to get something different. And, so if you want to pursue this, I really do encourage everyone to look up Ashley, look up what she does, because it's a super clean and energetic way to go about this. And why I say that also is because one of the biggest things for me was to really get that when we both can play the dom and sub roles, and then we also switch, it created something I never even thought of. Normally, in what I would consider our typical intimate interactions, it seemed like there was like one avenue. And this is just from my perspective. When Jocelyn and I would get together, or for you listening, it's like you as a couple are going to go into the intimate space, and it's going to go like one particular route. And like, is it going to go the way my partner wants it? Is it going to go the way I want it? Or even as we get into it, it's like, it seems to go one way.
Kind of just automatic. Like you're not really checking in with each other.
Someone ends up leading and someone ends up like following. And like, that's honestly how I related to it. But in the dom and the sub roles, it really was honestly that both people got to paint the picture of the experience they desired. So there was, I'll say 2 paths. We don't have enough time. To me, there was actually like 4 paths. But that was a big breakthrough for me to get that it wasn't just going to be one way determined by the leader in that intimate space time, but the dom and the sub, you both got to create the experiences you wanted. And that was really big for me to understand and to experience.
Yeah. And then you also got that reflection time of like 2 rounds of it, right? So it was like you gave an experience, and then it was like asking your partner, what did you like about that? What did you want adjusted? Is there anything you wanted added? So those are such rich opportunities when you can do this with your partner to expand and explore and get more confident to learn if you can open yourself up to really being honest and asking those questions.
And that's what I loved, is that we were like communicating while being intimate, because we even took what you taught us and then had our own intimate experiences in our home, our bedroom. And it's like we're communicating rather than just like doing it, which that goes into another block, which is a parallel to what couples experience out of the bedroom, which is not communicating enough. And, you know, a lot of couples just in their everyday life make a lot of assumptions, don't vocalize their needs, what their wants are. And so, can you address how communication can be a block or an opening for more pleasure, better sex?
Yes, I hear from women a lot that he should know. We've been together all this time. He should know what I need when I need it. And I really like to kind of dismantle that and to encourage women partners in general to communicate what state they're in and what they are desiring, even before they step into an intimate space. You know, saying that, oh, I'm really tender, I'm feeling emotional, can just allow your partner to really know and to hone that and to show up for you in that way, and vice versa. So being able to open up that communication is just so essential for those blocks to release. Like when you clearly say, this is what I'm desiring and needing, and to also be patient. Like I know that, you know, in my in my journey through this, I felt a lot of impatience. I would get impatient with my husband and just be like, oh my gosh. But I also didn't totally understand myself completely and what I really needed, and I wouldn't speak it. And I find this in a lot of my clients. You know, they just don't know how to speak it, or they don't feel safe speaking it. So opening up that form of communication out of the bedroom before you go into that, saying just what I said before, something around like, I'd really like to explore this thing. I'm wanting to understand this. You know, would you be willing to explore this with me? Is such a great invitation to each other rather than a demand. And communicating the things to each other that you love that the other person does is also a really great way to open that communication. I love that you do X, Y, Z, all these things, and I would love to explore this other thing, you know, or I would love to make a small adjustment to this thing, you know, just to find those ways to invite each other into the experience rather than getting frustrated and demanding and irritated. It's really important.
Yes, and I'm loving this so much. I wish we had several more hours with you. We are going to have some ways that couples can learn more from you that we'll announce coming soon. But kind of final question, which I think will wrap up and address some of the other blocks. And this is a question we receive a lot from couples, is about scheduling sex, right? Scheduling a sex night. And one person in particular said, please address this when you interview Ashley, because they said it feels like a chore sometimes. And so can you address like what's the real block, right? If it's not really about whether sex and intimacy is scheduled, I'm guessing it's the fact like that the resistance around whether you do that, and what the real block is that has it feel like a chore.
Again, I'm going to come back to pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
If you are feeling the enormous amounts of pleasure that are possible, you are going to find time all the time. You're going to make that space because it is going to feed and fuel your own body, mind, heart, and your relationship and every part of your life. So I do think that it can be a useful tool to schedule sex. However, schedule sex with a theme. Schedule sex with a meaning or an intention can be really helpful with that. So it's not a chore, but you're bringing intentionality into it. You're bringing meaning into it. What do you want to get from this scheduled time together? Is it just something that you're going to check off your list, like doing laundry? Or do you want to experience deep pleasure? Do you want to experience connection? Do you want to, do you want to be held tenderly because you're experiencing something heavy in your life right now? Mm-hmm. Do you want to get wild and primal? Do you want to try something new? What is your intention? How can you create it so it's actually interesting and coming out of the habitual loop that almost every couple gets into? And there's nothing that kills desire more than predictability.
Yes.
So, really having an intention, bringing something new to the container, to the scheduled intimacy time can change it up, and it can make it a lot more inviting and pleasurable than just, oh, here we go. We're going to go into the room. We're going to do the same thing that we've done every time. That's like, ugh, nobody wants that.
I love that honesty. It's such the right noise too. Ugh. And that's where I want everyone to underline, bookmark, put a sticky note up that this is about getting better at having sex and pleasing each other. And the fact of the matter is, you may need to be honest with yourselves and each other that maybe it's not as good as it could be. And that could be the great starting place to then feel freedom to explore and to prioritize it. Like if you are exploring more together, then it could be more exciting to go into the bedroom with each other. So I hope you all underline the fact that this is about unlearning, relearning, being humble, and realizing that's perfectly natural and okay. And we're so excited to share more resources that we have for you all and some collaborations with Ashley. Ashley, thank you for your time. I mean, we could have hours with you, and I know the audience is going to be eager to learn more from you. So thank you so much for your time.
I would love to just add one more thing really quickly to let people know that I've been on my own journey with this. I definitely was in a long marriage where that was habitual duty sex that was happening. And I dove in, my husband dove in with me. We just came to this precipice and we completely changed that dynamic, and it became incredibly nourishing and very often and amazing. So it's doable. You can shift and change this if you are both willing to explore and expand. We don't know what we don't know. And so we just need to kind of open our minds and learn and be patient and loving with each other.
You're amazing. Thank you so much, and excited to connect more with you.
Thank you both.